Jai Shri Krishna Sankirtan Ki Jai.
Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Chaturnanana Vrajajana Chaturnanana Vrajajana Yamunatiya Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishwapada Paramahansa Paripurajika Stota Zara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jago Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Abhidhamma Dhama Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Radha Gaurudhammadari Ki Jai. Shri New Govardhana Dhama Ki Jai. Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritcham Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiraya Nasta Parayeshu Abhadresh Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Reading from 2nd Canto, 5th chapter, text 2. Is that what it says? Yad Rupam Tad Adhishtanam Yata Svishtam Idam Prabhu Ya Samstam Yat Param. Looks like Yo, it's smudged. Yo Cha Natadvatam Pada Tatvataha Yad Rupam Tadadashtinam Tadadashtanam Yitag Shrishtam Idam Prabhu Yitsamastam Tad Param Yosh Tat Tatvam Vara Tat Tatha Yad Rupam Yadadashtanam Yara Shrishtam Idam Prabhu Yat Samastam Yat Param Yascha Tatatvam Bharatattvataha Yat What Rupam The symptoms of manifestation. Yat What Adhishtanam background. Yataha from where? Srishtam created. Idam this world. Prabhu, O my Father. Yat in which? Samstam conserved. Yat what? Param under control. Yat what are? Cha and. Tat of this. Tattvam the symptoms. Vara please describe. Tattvataha factually. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. My dear Father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Purport. The instructions, the inquiries by Narada Muni on the basis of factual cause and effect appear very reasonable. The atheists, however, put forward many self-made theories without any touch of cause and effect. The manifested world, as well as the spirit soul, is still unexplained by the godless atheists through the medium of experimental knowledge, although they have put forward many theories manufactured by their fertile brains. Contrary to such mental speculative theories of creation, however, Narada Muni wanted to know all the facts of creation in truth, and not by theories. Transcendental knowledge regarding the soul and the super soul includes knowledge of the phenomenal world and the basis of its creation. In the phenomenal world, the three things are factually observed. In the phenomenal world, three things are factually observed by any intelligent man, the living beings, the manifest world, and the ultimate control over them. The intelligent man can see that neither the living entity nor the phenomenal world are creations of chance. The symmetry of creation and its regulative actions and reactions suggests the plan of an intelligent brain behind them. And by genuine inquiry, one may find out the ultimate cause with the help of one who knows them factually. The verse again. My dear Father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is it being done? Responsibly, my dear Father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Mukam karoti vachalam bhangam langayate girim yatkari pataram vande Shri Guru Dinatanane. Since the 25th of May, which was Nrsingadev's appearance day, it coincided with the disappearance of Jayananda Prabhu. So, since I had some personal association with him, thank you, and I don't think anything was talked about him. I'm going to talk a little about him this morning. Just regarding this verse, I'll just comment briefly on the purport. It's talked about the material world. The inquiries by Narada Muni on the basis of factual cause and effect appear very reasonable. So someone was asking the other time I lectured about the three worlds, and why is it that we hear so much about the three worlds? The three worlds, as far as I know, are the Svargaloka, the heavenly planets, the Mityaloka, the middle planets, like the one we're in now, and the Patalaloka, the subterranean hellish planets. They're all part of the material world, or the Ekapad Vibhuti, not the spiritual world, which is the Tripad Vibhuti, the three-quarters of creation. So that's more of a little explanation on the three worlds concept. Anyway, back to Jayananda. I'm going to zigzag a little bit in time here because there's some things that aren't exactly chronological. But Jayananda, he was from Ohio originally, Dayton, Ohio, actually. And he contracted leukemia, which is a sort of terminal cancer, and it got into his blood and his bones, and he was quite terminal. And so he was staying near the temple in Los Angeles, not in the temple compound, but in later days he was given a room in one of the temple compound complexes and a hospital bed. So he wanted a Rath Yatra to take place. That was one of his key desires. It hadn't taken place in Los Angeles. This was in 1977. The first one in the West, I think, was in San Francisco. But Jayananda wanted one in Los Angeles because it's a bigger city and it's kind of more prominent in a way. So one day, and he couldn't walk. He was kind of confined to a wheelchair. One day, he and the GBC, who was then Karandar, and the temple president, who was then Rameshwar, got into a car, and we looked around. We drove around Los Angeles looking for where there was a congregation of people. And lo and behold, there was no one to be found. We went to the downtown area of Los Angeles. We went to Wilshire Boulevard. We went to Beverly Hills, and there was absolutely no one. They were all in their offices or in their cars, but there were no people. And so as a last resort, we went to Venice Beach. And lo and behold, there were people, lots of people, tourists and local tourists and international tourists, and they were coming from all over the place. Really bizarre crowd. We even saw a guy being pulled on a skateboard by a dog, a German Shepherd. I mean, it was really a bizarre situation. This Venice Beach was originally it was kind of like, it was part of LA, but it wasn't very developed. There was a nudist colony there, and after a while it became sort of a place for people to work out on bars, to gain strength, and it was called Muscle Beach, was this kind of a play on words, because mussel is a kind of clam, and they were trying to develop their muscles and this kind of thing. Anyway, it became a popular place, and there was a grass area right at the very end of the walk called Oceanfront Walk, and you could see out onto the ocean. There was grass, and then there was sand, and then there was ocean, the Pacific Ocean. So we were looking, and finally we saw a lot of people, and so we parked the car, and we got out of the car, and we went down this walkway called Oceanfront Walk. It's about a mile and a half long. And at the end of the walk, just as we were approaching the very end of the Oceanfront Walk, a policeman was standing in front of this wheelchair with his arms akimbo like this on his sides. And we thought, oh, we're not supposed to be putting a wheelchair on this walk. It's kind of a narrow walk, and we didn't know what he was doing, and he just stood right in front of us, and we had to stop. And then he put out his hand, and he shook hands with Jayananda, and he said, I want to thank you. My name is Sergeant White. I'm from the Los Angeles Police Force, and I want to thank you, gentlemen, because one of your men, I don't know if you know about this, but he said there was a gunfight in downtown Los Angeles last night, and one of your men saved my partner's life. He had a sort of platonic male partner, and we thought that was a good sign. We didn't know anything about this, but we decided then and there, after he left and we were going back, that we would have the festival at that place because there were people there, and that was a good sign that the police were sort of like friendly. So one day, and it was just sort of like, unplanned, kind of a spontaneous thing that we would have a Rath Yatra festival at that Oceanfront Walk, but it wasn't officially approved of by the temple president. It was then Rameshwar. And then one day, almost as if by magic, there appeared several piles of lumber in the parking lot of Watsika Avenue, which is part of the temple complex. And we didn't know what this was. And then little by little we found out that Jayananda had ordered this from his hospital bed. On the telephone, he ordered several tons, I think, of this wood. And he thought that would... He was a graduate from Ohio State, I think Ohio State or Ohio University as a construction engineer. So he figured that he would get someone to build the Rath Yatra cart from scratch out of this lumber. And so he told us what his plan was. And I don't know if you know about this, but in Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says that he acknowledged the donation. It cost him something like $5,000, which is a lot of money in those days. Anyway, there was another person, and there were about 70 devotees in this community, Los Angeles community. It was called New Dwarka, and there were 2 or 3 big, fairly large apartment buildings and a couple of houses, and there was the temple building, which was formerly a Methodist church school. Anyway, there was one devotee there who knew how to do construction, and he was an expert at construction, and he knew how to weld things. So he made the wheels for the chariot from scratch, just with tubes and a thing in the middle, a hub, and then a sort of like metal strips of metal for the outside, for what they would roll on. And then he sent these wheels. He constructed them he welded them together, and he sent them to another state to have rubber vulcanized onto these strips so that they were very solid. It wasn't just tires from trucks. It was actually vulcanized onto the metal, and they came back, and those were the wheels. And then little by little, this cart started to, not just one cart, but 3 carts started to take shape. And by this guy, he was an expert builder. Jayananda was the engineer, but he was in his hospital bed. He was confined. So one day, I think it was either on Jayananda's birthday or very near his birthday, we wanted him to see what was going on. I mean, he didn't see anything because he was in his hospital bed in his apartment, and we wanted him to see, but he didn't want to go anywhere. So we devised a little bit of a ruse, and told him that Lalitanath, the guy that was building them, needed to see him. He had an engineering problem that it needed to be solved. And Jayananda said, "Well, that's all right. He'll figure it out." And finally, we convinced Jayananda to go there. And because it was a special occasion, there were a lot of devotees assembled in the parking lot. And one devotee had made cakes that looked like Rath Yatra carts. They were cakes that were about half a meter high, and they were decorated with colors the same as the Rath Yatra carts. And we wheeled Jayananda out there. And as we were wheeling out, it was about a 50 or 100 meters to the parking lot from where he was. And as soon as we wheeled him about halfway there, he heard the devotees chanting, and he kind of knew that something was going on, and he figured that it was, about the Rath Yatra. And so when we got there, there was nothing to be learned about the construction. He just sat there and listened to the kirtan, which got louder and louder and finally ended. And then he insisted to stand up and say something, even though he could barely stand and he could barely talk, and his voice was very warbly when he talked. And he talked about how wonderful the Rath Yatra is, and how Prabhupada wanted all this done, and this is just a wonderful thing. And it was right where the three carts were in this parking lot. It was about the size of, the parking lot is about twice the size of this room. So he spoke, and then one of the devotees who made the cakes cut the cake and offered Jayananda the first piece, and he refused to eat it. He just wanted the children that were there to have the cake, and he offered them, then they took it and they ate it, and it was a very nice gathering. So he was really directing the whole Rath Yatra. This was approximately in June of 1977. Prabhupada was in Mayapur at the time, and sometimes he went to England, and he was very ill. Anyway, this was all going on, and there was another devotee named Govardhana who came to Jayananda and asked him what his vision was, what we should do. And he and I both went there together, and Jayananda was like the brains behind the whole thing. He didn't move out of his hospital bed, but every day he kind of told us what to do. And Los Angeles is a very complicated big city there, and we had to get permission from literally 30 different departments. There was a police department, there was a traffic department, there was the parks and recreation department, promotion department, and so on and so forth. And we had to go to all these places, and Prabhu and I would come back every night after, duking it out with these city officials. And he would say something like, he was from Ohio, so he had this very kind of Hoosier, we call them Hoosier accents. And he said, "I don't see how you guys do it all." And we weren't actually doing anything. We were just operating in the shadow of trying to please him. But he would make us feel very important. He said, "I don't know how you guys are doing all this." And every day that went on for about 2 months. And finally, Rameshwar, who is the president of the temple, decided to make it official that there would be a Rath Yatra. And he organized a big fundraising marathon, and the whole thing cost about $70,000. I mean, in those days, it was a lot, very, very big amount of money. So there were, and then Govardhana and I organized a big sheet of paper that was about the size of 4 A3 papers, and it was a graph. And on the top axis were the names of each devotee, so all 70 devotees, and on the other axis, on the left side, were all the days of the week. So everyone had something to do for 2 months. They had to either raise money in the airports, or they had to do something. They had to cook. And at a certain point, Rameshwar organized that there would be a free feast. And the free feast would consist of pakoras and papadums and potato salad. So there was a refrigerator truck out in front of the temple for about 2 weeks before the festival, making a big humming sound, and it was keeping all the potato salad cool. And that humming sound just kind of pervaded everything for about 2 weeks. Everyone knew that they were kind of involved. They were not kind of involved, they were very involved. They knew that their collection of money was all going to the Rath Yatra. They knew that their work was all going for this Rath Yatra at that time. And it's still, I think it's observed as Indian Independence Day. Indians' independence from England. It was in 1947, August the 15th. So that was a Sunday that year. So we organized it that day. And many wonderful things happened. And it was, it was almost like we were the temple presidents, co-temple presidents for 2 months, because we had every single person in the community involved in this one way or another. And one of the things we did was we constructed these banners. Each banner was about 30 meters long and about 1.5 meters high. And they were yellow colored with red writing that said Festival of the Chariots in big letters. The letters were about 15 or something centimeters high. And then below that it said Free Feast for 10,000. And we made about 30 of these and strung them up all over the city in really important intersections of streets. And one of the biggest banners was put up over Wilshire Boulevard, which is a very wide street. There's like 2 or 3 lanes going each way. And eventually this banner started to sag down because it was done by amateurs. We hired this thing called a cherry picker. That you know what a cherry picker is. It's like goes up and you stand in this thing, and we did it all ourselves at night because it was kind of illegal. Or it was sort of in a gray area to put them up ourselves. Anyway, this one banner was the longest one. It was starting to sag down, and it sagged down so far that it got caught on a truck, and the truck caused the things that were holding it to bend forward. They were lampposts, and at the last minute the ropes broke, and nobody fortunately got killed. But this was all narrated to us by a guy who was in the parking lot taking money, and he saw the whole thing, and he ran out into the street and wrapped up the banner really quickly and took it back into his little booth there before the police could come. So that was what we did. We went out every night for about 3 nights and put banners up all over the streets, all over the city, and right in the area where the Rath Yatra was. And each night we would come back and tell Jayananda what we did that day, and he would say the same thing. He'd say, "I don't know how you guys are doing it. It's just amazing how you're doing this." And we were all doing it for him. One of the people that had to give us permission were the Parks and Recreation Department. That was one of the local departments in Los Angeles, and there were 2 women in charge of it. One was named Rachel Martinez, and I can't remember the other one's name, but the other one, lady had a big cross, like about 6 inches high, 7 meters high, and she was wearing it. That was her uniform. And after about 2 or 3 Rath Yatras, she decided, I don't know if it was her, but we were told by the Park and Recreation Commission that the festival would be banned. Anyway, that's another story that I'll get into. But in order to have the first Rath Yatra, we drove up to this place called Riverside, California, east of Los Angeles. And it's the place where they train wild animals, cheetahs and panthers and leopards and tigers and lions, to jump down on people and not hurt them. They train them to do that. And, I don't know if they declaw them or whatever. Anyway, they had elephants. So we thought, well, we'll get some elephants and make this really a fantastic festival. So it cost us something like $4,000 to get 3 elephants, big elephants, full-grown, full-size elephants. So they were there in between the Rath Yatra carts when the parade happened. And these elephants were, we had to hire their what do they call them, mahouts, the trainers. And they were painted in bright colors to match the Rath Yatra cars, reds and yellows and blues. And on each elephant, when the parade started, there was a big shamayana over its back, and a rider dressed as a clown. Sometimes some of them were blowing big trumpets, long horns with like 2 meters long. It was a really exotic thing. And these elephants were a big part of the festival. And even before the festival, one of the elephants was brought down to promote the whole thing. And a television program was organized such that the hosts of the television program sat on the back of one of the elephants. And it was a huge elephant. It was like, bigger than African elephant. I think they're bigger than Indian elephants, but it was a huge thing. And I remember the children were just agape at seeing this giant thing come out of the back of a truck. And wow, they said, "See that huge elephant?" And anyway, it was so big and so heavy that every time it took a step, it went in the backyard of one of the houses. the turf just sunk into the ground like a carpet. There was a hole in the ground and a carpet above it, and it just sunk into the ground. And somehow or other, it went off although at some point, because the elephant wasn't fully trained, it sort of rolled over and almost crushed the people that were sitting on its back. But anyway, they escaped any injury. So we went to Jayananda, and each night he said the same thing. He said, "I don't know how you guys are doing it. I don't know. That's just amazing." And so that day of the Rath Yatra, it was kind of overcast and drizzly, and we thought, oh, it's just ruined. But somehow or other, before the parade got underway, the clouds cleared up and the sun came out, and it was a wonderful day. And the oceanfront walk is about 2 miles long. It's right along the beach. And there's another city called Santa Monica, which is adjacent to Los Angeles. They're touching each other, and the Santa Monica city has its own police force and its own council and everything. And anyway, we had to get permission from all those people as well. That's why altogether it was 30 departments. So anyway, there was just maybe an inch or two of room between the curb of the oceanfront walk on each side of the chariot wheels. I mean, they were just able to fit the chariots inside the oceanfront walk, and one of the elephants was in between each cart. There were 3 carts. It was the first time there were 3 big carts, made from scratch in Rath Yatra. So it proceeded with the usual fanfare with a lot of chanting. There were chanting parties between each cart, and the elephants were very happy. And there was some man, I think he was drunk or something, who was kind of, walking behind the elephant and kind of mimicking him and making strange remarks. So we didn't know this, but the elephant seemed to know what was going on, and it reached out its back leg and tripped the man, and he sort of doubled over as if he were like winded or something. But he learned his lesson from this beast. Anyway, it was at the end of the festival where the grass area was. There were a lot of exhibits. There was a changing bodies exhibit. It was life-size, made by Bharadwaj. There was a video tent, and there were about 3 stages. There was singing and chanting going on every stage. And Prabhu and I organized signs that would stand on a vertical pole that would show where each thing was. Like one sign pointed to the free food, another sign pointed to the video booth, another side pointed to the video stage, and each vertical column had about 10 or 20 signs on it. And one thing happened just before the it was so intense that the night before the festival, Jayananda was aware of this. Prabhu and I didn't sleep at all, and the beach where the festival took place was about 7 kilometers away from where the temple was, straight down Venice Boulevard. And so I remember being in the bathroom trying to shave with a walkie-talkie in one hand, a telephone in the other hand, and trying to get involved in the organization of this festival. It was quite an event. And then we went down to the site of Venice Beach, and we had these shamayanas, these multicolored canvas tents from India, erected. And one of the firemen came and he said, I can't sanction these because these are flammable. He showed us, and he lit a match to one of the pieces of cloth, to one of the shamayanas, and it went on fire. And he said, but I just don't have the heart to stop this festival. He said, I'll tell you what you do. You get a hose that's 300 feet long, and you hook it up to this tap, and then I'll let you go ahead. And he was represented the Los Angeles Fire Department. So we looked all over. It was a Sunday, so that we finally found one place that was open that had a hose, not as long as we wanted, but we got 2 or 3 hoses and screwed them together, and then showed this guy, and then he was okay with it. So right from the very, very minute before the festival, we didn't even know if it was going to happen. And those tents came on a ship. Those shamayanas all the way from New Delhi, and on a steamship line called the American President's Line. And in order to get it to arrive in time for the festival it was quite a mission, because I remember sleeping in the inside one of the temple rooms. It was formerly a school. It was actually a school classroom at one point, and sleeping next to the telephone. In those days, to call India, it was like calling Mars or something. It was like really difficult. And Charu was organizing the thing, Bhakti Charu, who's the temple president in Salt Lake now. And somehow or other, they got from New Delhi to Bombay and got put on these boats. And the boats arrived like the day before the festival on a Saturday. And the customs people said, well, we don't do anything. We don't even work on Saturdays. And we just convinced him finally, after an hour-long conversation, that you have to release these things through customs, and we have to have this festival. It's scheduled for tomorrow. And he miraculously did it. The whole thing was just like magic. It just happened like magic. And everyone was depending on this thing happening the next day with big shamayanas. We made tents out of the shamayanas. So we told all this to Jayananda, and he was very pleased at all this. And at the end of the day, I'm just going to go back a little bit. There was a lady who had a big portfolio, and we wanted this to be televised on the national news. Kind of a impossible mission, because all the news is just about plane crashes and football games and scandals and floods and hurricanes and that sort of thing. So all the few of us went into Rameshwara's quarters after the event to see if it was going to be on the news. Because what happened was this girl had a big portfolio, and somehow, very miraculously, I think she used her feminine charm. She got she went in through the back door, so to speak. And the first thing that the national desk editor said to her is, "How did you get in here?" So somehow or other, she convinced him to put this on the news, and this news is just full of like horrible things, plane crashes and stuff like that, floods. And so I went into and the lady who was at the festival, a reporter for the one of the big news stations, her name was Karen Lovejoy. She was also known as Care and Lovejoy. And she said to us, as she was eating her samosa, that this is the greatest event that I've ever covered. She was a reporter for one of the big networks. There were ABC, CBS, and NBC. It was before CNN. So the news broadcast was that night, and something like 7 or 8 million people were watching. And we didn't know anything about this, even if it was going to be broadcast or not. And it started at 11 o'clock, and it was getting to be 11:20, and then all of a sudden, there was this guy, Ed Bradley, the reporter, and behind him, on the whole wall behind him, was a picture of the Jagannath Puri temple. I don't know where he got it or where it came from. But then they went to Venice Beach. They showed this video of Venice Beach. And first she interviewed me, and then she interviewed a few people, and then lo and behold, Jayananda's parents were there, and she was interviewing them. She said, "What's your name?" And they told him her name, Jim Kaur. His name was James Kaur Sr., and she was whatever her first name was, Mrs. Kaur. And why are you here? And where are you from? And they said, "Well, we're from Grand Junction, Colorado," which is quite a ways away from Los Angeles. It's probably about 2,000 kilometers away. And so why did you come here? And they said, "Well, our son built these carts, and he died a couple of months ago, so we wanted to see what it was all about." And that became the sort of soundbite of the news, the main feature of that news broadcast. And none of us were aware that this was even going on. We didn't even know his parents were there. So that was kind of the culmination of the whole thing. It was pretty miraculous how it happened, and it was all due to this one person's vision of having a Rath Yatra in this one of the most important, probably at that time was probably the largest city in the country. And then a couple of months later, Prabhupada got a report. He was in England at the time. He was sick. That was the couple of months before he departed. But one of the things he did while he was very ill was he wanted to go to London. And while he was in London, for that 2 weeks he was there, he was shown the photographs of the chariots. So one thing I wanted to say was that just a couple of months before, that was in early September or late August of 1977, but in June of that year, I think it was the 7th of June, 250 dacoits attacked the temple in Mayapur. And it was a very organized attack. They cut phone wires, they cut electric wires, and they had bombs. They had Molotov cocktails, known as poor man's hand grenades, petrol bombs, and they came in the middle of the night, and they were so violent that they blew off a bomb, and one of the devotees was injured so much that he had to have half of his leg amputated. It was a pretty serious thing, and Prabhupada said this was due to the communist plot. At that time, West Bengal was ruled by the Communist Party, and Prabhupada mentioned it several times that it's a communist plot. Anyway, he saw the pictures of the Ratha Yatra a couple of weeks after it was over, and I have a little recording of what he said. Photographs depicting Ratha Yatra. This is a letter from Tamal Krishna Raj, written in 1977, dated 6th of September. Now the photographs depicting Ratha Yatra in Los Angeles arrived from you. This is a letter he addressed to all the residents of New Dwarka. His Divine Grace was fully entranced on how all of you, his loving disciples and children, dedicated all of your energy to this ceremony. With keen interest, Srila Prabhupada heard the description of each photograph and glanced so lovingly at each of you who were engaged in the service of Lord Jagannath. There were tears in Prabhupada's eyes, and they made a path down his cheeks as he shook his head from side to side. So much appreciative was he of the effort which you have all made. When the photographs showing the 3 chariots on procession were shown to him, Srila Prabhupada made a long humming sound, and with his eyebrows very arched, he declared, quote, "We have never seen such carts," end quote. When the photograph showing the long lines of people lining up to see the changing body exhibit were shown to him, Srila Prabhupada was deeply pleased and said, quote, "I told you this would happen. I am very much glad to see this," end quote. The experience of seeing these photographs was so much moving to His Divine Grace that he was unable to sit for his massage, nor could he take his meals. We requested him to have his massage, but in a choked voice, he said, "Not now." Then after 2 hours, he retired to bed, deeply entranced, meditating on the Ratha Yatra of Lord Jagannath of Los Angeles. And then there was a conversation a couple of days later. Shrudakirti was there, and they were talking about the Ratha Yatra. And Shrudakirti said, "It was big. I think it was the best," talking about the Ratha Yatra in Los Angeles, "the best that I have ever seen. The carts were beautifully decorated with nice carnations all over." He was reporting to Prabhupada like that. So that's what happened, and it was all due to Jayananda's vision. And it was about 2 weeks after that event when all the cakes were rolled out that he passed away, and it was quite a big event. So in memory of him, after the Ratha Yatra, I went out to the Ratha Yatra and started sweeping up. So there was no evidence of anything happening the day before. It was a Monday morning. And then we took a cake to a full-sized cake to every department that they gave us permission to have this Ratha Yatra, including the people from the Los Angeles Recreations Commission who banned the festival. And one last thing I wanted to say was that after they wanted to ban the festival, and we had a meeting with the Los Angeles City Council and the police and the City Council of Santa Monica in Rameshwar's well-appointed conference room with a big conference table, and they heard that, and these 2 ladies were there that wanted to ban the festival, and the 2 policemen from Santa Monica said that we shouldn't think that this is a bad festival. It's one of the best things that ever happens in this city, and to this day, if you look on the Santa Monica websites, they talk about this festival, that it happens every year, that the Hare Krishnas put it on, and they talk about the chariots as being glittering. That's the word they use, glittering. So they wanted to ban the festival, and they had a hearing in the Los Angeles City Council chamber somewhere, in a big room, and there were about 15 people, all opposed. They weren't exactly opposed, but they were like the jury. And one of them said, "Oh, these guys, they could build this festival in 2 hours if they wanted to." And their lawyer, this lady lawyer, was so fried with them for wanting to ban the festival that she said in the intermission, if they come back and they want to ban this festival, I'm quitting. That was their lawyer was so upset with them that she offered to resign. Anyway, that all happened because of Jayananda's vision, and I could probably talk for a few more hours about all the great association he gave us, but we have to end now, unfortunately. So, anybody has any questions or comments?
Can you highlight some of Jayananda's qualities?
Well, there's very little time, but I could really talk about the qualities of Jayananda for a long time, but he was kind of like 6 feet tall and very humble. And one time when he was working on the Rath Yatras, you could only see his feet sticking out. There was the San Francisco Rath Yatra, one of the first ones, and he had been up all night. And because he had been up all night, he was very tired. So that day, the devotees had a darshan with Srila Prabhupada in one of the rooms in San Francisco. And a few times during the darshan, Jayananda just started to nod out. He was so tired, and he was full of grease, and he didn't even want to go. He said, "I'm so full of grease, I can't go. I can't go to this darshan." And the person next to him, each time he started to nod out, would kind of nudge him, and he would sit up erect. And he thought that Prabhupada wasn't noticing him. And then after about 3 times, Prabhupada pointed his finger at the guy who was nudging him, and he said, "You don't leave him alone. He's doing more work than all of you combined." Anyway, that's just one of the qualities of Jayananda, but he had that, humility.
I just want to thank you for the marvellous detail that you described that and your personal experience. Thank you. I had a question.
It's probably the most thrilling and austere 2 months of my devotional career. That's why I remembered so many names and dates.
I don't want to detract from the glories of we're talking about Jayananda, Prabhu, but this devotee who stopped a gunfight, do you know who that was?
We never found out. We never found out who was involved in the gunfight or who the devotee was. Not that we tried that hard. Yes? Can you stand up, please, if you're going to ask something?
Stand up?
Yeah.
Raj, I just wanted to humbly ask you to write down those pastimes. If you find the time to speak them somehow, and some put it right.
I'll try. Thank you.
Could you repeat that question, Mark? Sorry.
His question was that if I could write down some of the details that I gave today, and I said I would try. I think I wrote some of them down.
Actually, you don't need to, Maharaj. It's been recorded, so maybe Prabhu could transcribe it.
Yeah, if it's been recorded, it can be transcribed. So it's
Also,
every word is preserved.
also the 2 hours you said you could keep speaking about him.
What's that? Stand up? I can't. He doesn't have a microphone, so I want everyone to hear what he said.
You said you could speak for hours. I just wanted to make sure those hours are included.
Hours are included?
The hours that you couldn't speak now, if that also could be recorded, every detail. And it's just, I know it's a lot to ask. You're a very busy person. I think it's very important for us.
To record what's been said?
He's asking whether you mentioned that you could speak for 2 more hours.
Oh.
He's saying maybe you can write those things down.
Well, it just depends if I can get it recorded. I don't think I have the energy to do it unless there's a TV camera or a microphone in front of me. But I'll try. That's a good idea. There's a book called Jayananda Thakur, I think is the name of it, by Vishoka, and he gives a lot of detail already, probably more than I do. Can you stand, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just on expenses, it seems an exorbitant amount of money.
It was.
$70,000. I think today was that, like $250,000
Yeah.
for a Rath Yatra. So can you explain why things were so expensive? I understand
Why it was so expensive was
the elephants, the car.
the elephants, the carts, and the the prasadam for the free food feast for 10,000. And building the stages, we had to buy wood for the stages. There was wood for the Rath Yatra, but wood for the stages had to be purchased. And then to just have all the Shamayanas had to be purchased from India, and then the shipping had to be paid for, and the fire hoses, and it adds up. All these things add up.
Did the permits cost?
Permits had to be purchased, some of them, not all of them. And then in addition to the free feast, there were food booth feasts. I mean, there was things being sold like pakoras and samosas and delicate sweets and things like delicacies.
What did the cart in total end up costing? Probably 10, 12, 15,000?
Something like that. Each cart was about 10 or 15,000. I mean, all but for the wood. And then we had free labor because the people who but the vulcanization and the shipping to Arizona cost money. But the actual building of the carts was at free labor.
My last question is, are they still around, those carts?
No, what happened is someone figured out how to make a collapsible cart. And now all 3 carts are collapsed and put into a van. It's like, 40 years later, the technology is figured out.
Any remnants of those carts anywhere, or what happened?
I'm sure there's remnants of them. They're probably in people's attics or somewhere. I don't know where they are, but there's a lot of remnants. And someone probably even has the wheels. But I don't know where they are. But anyway, we'll find out. If you're really interested, you can go on to Google and find out. Collector's items. Yes?
Was the large Lord Chaitanya that was at San Francisco there?
Pardon?
The big Lord Chaitanya that was at the San Francisco Rath Yatra?
No. See, what happened with, I don't know if that figure still exists, but Prabhupada didn't like the idea of having deities of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya out of doors, because they would eventually accumulate bird stool. So, but I'm sure there's remnants of those things around somewhere. There was an outdoor.
He was huge.
Yeah, I saw pictures of him. He was really huge.
That's all I remember.
Yeah, very imposing. Like a thing about
Like gold and
30 feet, or how much is that in meters? 10 meters high? Yes?
I saw them in Berkeley, California.
Yeah, Berkeley, the same ones.
They were just right there, open, and you just could take them and see at any moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very impressive.
Mm.
But I just wanted to say that because eventually Prabhupada kind of vilified them as not being proper, but they made a lot of people interested because they were so imposing.
Maharaj, did many devotees come from the United States?
Can you stand up, please?
Did many devotees come from the United States and other countries nearby for that Rath Yatra?
Well, yeah, they came from all over the United States, and some people came from other countries. But it wasn't very, very heavily advertised, internationally. So they were mainly people from the other parts of the United States. Because that was in the early days. That was 1977. Rath Yatras it was only about the 3rd or 4th Rath Yatra. Okay. Thank you very much.